Alright, so we're here in Options Explorer, and thanks to Bryce for the question of how do you choose your settings. So I don't usually mess around with Options Explorer too much. I've been playing the game for a long time, so I'm pretty set with like what my settings are. But I am constantly kind of tweaking and stuff, and a lot of people will tell you this year, because of the way the PCI is moving, and I'll talk to you guys about that in a future video, directional is actually kind of the way to go. Of course, Options Explorer is the best way to find out what you like to do, right? So you can get in here, pick any one of them, just mess around. I'd say this is absolutely the best way to try it out. You can mess around, see exactly what this kind of stuff does. That was pretty nice. Let's see. I'm not sure what the difficulty is on this. Maybe it's just rookie. But you get to mess around. You get to see exactly how each thing responds. So you just mess around with this. I'm liking directional right now, and I've heard of a lot of people, switching to directional. So that may happen eventually, and I'll probably to figure out if I want to do that, I'm going to come in here and mess around with it in Options Explorer. One more thing, when you're trying to figure out what works for you, it's not just about what you're comfortable with. A lot of that actually comes from the cameras and stuff, but you have to figure out what kind of hitter you are. So zone hitting is really good for free swingers who like to swing at everything around and outside of the zone even. Directional is good for people who are patient and can let the ball, kind of find the middle of the zone. And if you are having trouble with that, you can check out my video about plate discipline. And if that's not something you want to do or you feel you're comfortable with at this point, zone hitting is definitely the way to go. But that's also one thing you have to be aware of, is what kind of player you are. And you can see right here, Verlander's just kind of throwing over the middle of the plate, so it doesn't really matter. But when you're going back and forth between trying to be patient and seeing pitches around the zone, directional can get kind of tricky, because it's all about player ratings and exactly how well they're able to put the bat on the ball and things like that. Directional is kind of similar to Pulse and Classic in terms of you're not as in control, but at the same time, if you're really bad, like let's say you try out the meter and you are just terrible at trying to hit that yellow bar, getting anywhere close to it, then Pulse or Classic are probably going to be very helpful for you. Basically, your precision and making mistakes are going to be sometimes not your fault. So when you're playing meter or you're playing analog, you're going to see a lot of times that if I'm early, that's going to be my own fault. If I'm late, it's my fault. If I'm missing my spots, it's my own fault. Now, we'll get into the other one in a second. Pulse or Classic, I haven't used these in a very long time, but basically you're picking your spot, right? And the meter doesn't show up, you have no control after you pick your spot. Now, if you're pitching with a guy that's got good per nines and good control and things like that, this might be the way to do it. And you're really just deciding, what your game plan is and trying to execute pitches in terms of that game plan and not physically executing them, right? So that's something you have to determine. If you're really bad at trying to get those locations and things, maybe you want to start with one of these two. Pulse, I believe, he's got some pretty poor control right now, and therefore it's going to throw all over the place. So maybe even Classic is the best way to go. And I'm trying to, there's going to be no chance I'm trying to hit that center. But that's kind of just how you determine, you got to figure out how precise you are of a player. And, if you want to start out, Classic's going to really help you trying to find out game plans. If you're really just starting out the game, you want to try out some different things game plan wise, then Classic is the way to go. But if you're already, a veteran in the game, you might want to try out one of these and just kind of get a feel for it, see what works best. Whenever I've tried pure analog, it's been really terrible for me. Like, I have no idea what to do. From what I understand, pure analog is the most responsive to, actually being good or bad at pitching. I've just used meter for forever, so I stick with that. So let's mess with this a little bit. Right now I have it on pitcher, and I talk about in one of my other videos, intro to meter pitching, that you want to have a consistent pitcher, feel, consistent pitcher camera. And I've chosen pitcher. It's kind of a little bit closer than the broadcast, which is the default. This one right here, that one's a little bit far away, and it's different for every single stadium, so you don't get your consistency. You have to have a feel for your weaknesses and trying to combat that. So for me, when I go back and forth between different stadiums, I see that I have an issue with hitting the corners, and sometimes I try to hit the outside corner, but it comes back over the plate because there's a little bit of a tilt based on the different broadcast situations. So that's why I like to keep it at pitcher, just something consistent. This is what works for me, but you should mess around with all of these. Even this one right here, you can't really see the corner of the plate, which is sometimes an issue, but at the same time you get to see directly towards the plate, and it helps you hit the corners a little better. Pitcher offset even. Again, you're missing the outside part of the plate. Outfield is kind of similar to pitcher, and then the batter cameras are good as well because you're kind of straight on. I just like the feel of the opposite side, so it looks like you're watching a game, But of course, these are probably good as well, and I'd say mess around with all of them. Just try to, select it, and then go back and throw a few pitches and see what happens. You don't want to try to do this in game too much, but the one thing is playing online is a lot different than playing the CPU. Especially this year, I've noticed there's a lot of weird stuff going on with the PCI that isn't going on in CPU games. So you are going to have to try it out online, and I'd recommend playing a mode that you don't care about as much. Maybe play now with not on Diamond Dynasty or something, or things like that. If you're big into ranked seasons, maybe play a lot of Battle Royale, although it costs some stubs. It might be worth it. Or playing events, that kind of thing where you are playing online, but it's not going to mess with your, the stuff that you care about if it goes poorly. For me, I can usually tell right away if I'm not comfortable with something. Like right now, I can see that there's some cool stuff that goes on with analog pitching, and I don't use it too much. But I can also notice that there have been many times where I've just lobbed the ball over the plate, or I thought I was going in the correct direction, but it went way off to the side, or even the opposite side. So I feel like something like pure analog has a huge learning curve, and I'm not sure if I want to put in the time to do that with all the time I've already spent on meter pitching. It would probably set me back a long time. So you have to be aware of that, that you don't want to be kind of wasting time trying to figure this out if it's not comfortable right away, or you see something that just doesn't interest you. One thing I do want to talk about cameras, you should pick something that you're able to command the strike zone with. So strike zone is like the go-to for a lot of people, the top players and stuff. And I've used strike zone for the last couple of years. I also like strike zone 2. I feel like you can see the ball, especially, so strike zone 1 you can't see the plate, right? Strike zone 2 you can see the plate, and it helps a little bit to figure out what's a ball and what's a strike on the inside-outside corner. And it's a little harder, I feel, to pick up the breaking ball, but it's also good, for your discipline and everything. Trying to find the middle of the plate. And it's also close enough that you can command the strike zone, unlike strike zone 3 gets a little farther away, and it's hard to see where your PCI is going to go sometimes. Strike zone 1 is the best for that, definitely. But you want to mess around. They have so many different combinations that you can use. Anything on this side of the field, you have to find what you're comfortable with, play some games, and I would recommend playing Challenge of the Week for the batter side, because you just get rapid fire pitches one after another, and you get to get comfortable with your hitter, mess with your strike zone, and it's not going to hurt you if you're losing or anything. And it's also competitive, so it's a little bit more fun. But you get to mess around with those. I would recommend playing Challenge of the Week for finding out your settings as well. And then pitching, obviously, you'll have to do a little bit of practice mode or options explore. But a lot of the hitting stuff you can practice in Challenge of the Week, so I'd recommend that as well. And just mess around with it. That's the main thing. You have to try it out, because everybody's going to be different. You have to see what you're comfortable with, and that's the most important part. So hopefully that covers it. If you have any questions, let me know. I could do a follow-up video as well if something wasn't clear. Thank you for watching, and see you soon. Thank you for watching. If you like this video and want to see more like it, hit like and subscribe. If you want to see something new or have a specific part of the game you want help with, be sure to leave a comment and we'll all try to help out. Peace.